Hey, good morning, good morning. We are a bit early this morning, but that's life, that's how it is. I want to bring you greetings in the name of His Imperial Majesty, Emperor Haile Selassie, King of Kings and Lords of Lords, conquering lion of the tribe of Judah, Jah, Rastafari. This morning I expect to have in studio Mr. Aubrey Norton. Before he gets here, I just want to share a little bit of information, share some reasoning with you. Um, I have here a book that is dedicated to African tradition, African livity. You know, um, and I want to do something called the self. This bit of information speaks to us about ourselves. You know, and he said, "There is nothing in the world more powerful than the spirit. The spirit is of our true self. It knows exactly what we must learn to do in life, how we will learn to do it, and whether or not we are willing to pay attention to what the self is teaching us. Our real self is whole and complete, wise and just, unlimited and ever present. When we tap into the power, knowledge, and wisdom of self, we can fulfill our purpose in life with grace and ease. When we give up ourselves to the demands and expectations of others, we become confused, lost, and broken in spirit. Our job in life, when we choose to accept it, is to allow the spirit within us to be the self that becomes a gift to the world." I want to say, right, that the self is the most powerful part of one's life. Because this is where everything begins. Your confidence, you know, your desire to do things, everything happens from within, right? To love someone, to love your neighbor, it must happen from within. Very often we look on the outside. We look for God on the outside. We look for God in a place that we call heaven and all over the place. But you will find everything within yourself. Is that if you decide that, look, you'd like to be a lawyer, then you will have to nurture yourself to be able to accomplish that career that you may so choose. Yeah, you just can't say, oh, God is going to do it for me. No, God is not going to do it for you. You have to do it for yourself. Very often, like I was coming down the road there just not too long ago, and I saw this guy. He doesn't have one foot. He's one-legged, and his crutch in one hand, and he's sweeping. He's doing work. All right, he's out there doing work. Now, very often you would go on the television, and you will see persons without hands that are using their toes to write. It shows, that tells you of the power in man, that whatever you desire, whatever you choose, how humble you may be, these things could be achieved, right? Very often we have people crying out they can't find jobs and there is no job, but they prefer to sit down at home and expect that jobs are going to meet them at home. It never happens that way. You have got to go seeking. When you look around, you see early in the morning, you hear the birds, they come out and they start singing and giving praises to the Almighty, and they go searching for fruits. They go looking for cherries. They wouldn't sit in the treetop and wait for food to come to them. They have to go in search of food. All right, and so that is basically the life of man. If there's so much gold and diamond and bauxite and timber and manganese and agriculture, there's so much in this land, but you cannot get it if you sit at home afraid that, look, if I go in the interior, snake might bite me, or if I go in the interior, this may happen to me, the river may swallow me up. And no, we can't be living in fear, right? Because very often I find that people on the coastland dread the hinterland. What? They be not going there. You got jaguar, they got tiger, they got. Why you going bush? What wrong to you, boy? But what is happening is that persons are coming from different countries, coming from all over the place. And when they reach the Guyana, where are they heading for? The hinterland. Because that is where the wealth of the nation lies. So I encourage you to get yourself together and be prepared to work to develop this land of ours. And I'm speaking to the young people now, because unless you qualify yourselves, unless you get yourself an education or a training that can allow you to make a contribution, you will just be sitting on the wayside and hoping and wishing and nothing happening for you. And you will see the people coming from Venezuela, from Trinidad, they're coming all over the place, and they're going to do those jobs, the same jobs that you say you do not want to do, the cleaning, the whatever. They are going to be doing it. We see Venezuelans and Brazilians, they're out there in the streets, and they're making stuff, and they're selling it to Guyanese, they're selling it to people like themselves, and they're making a living. You know, so those people who are coming here are not going to go to the government to seek a job. They are going to create. You know, and I wish that many of you would have had a chance to go to other countries to see how people do things. People don't depend on people to do everything for them, or nobody waits in the United States and say, man, look, I don't know what Mr. Bush is doing for me. Mr. Bush got to bring some money for me. Or not Mr. Bush, Mr. Trump. You know? No, he got 200-something million people, nearly 200 million. You can't touch everybody. So we have got to be realize that we are the masters of our own destiny. Whatever we want for ourselves, we have to make it happen for ourselves, our community, and the nation as a whole. We're going to go back to master control, and when we come back, hopefully we're going to have our guests. You know? I want to share a little bit of information here that I know is good food for the soul, you know. And it says, eat not bread while another stands by without extending your hand to him or her. As for food, it is always here. It is man and woman who do not remain. A person may be rich or poor, but bread remains with those who share it. One who was rich last year may be a vagrant this year. Therefore, be not anxious to fill your belly without regard for others. For you know not where your course will lead. If you become needy, another may do good by you. The watercourse of last year has disappeared, and this year another stream has appeared in its place. Great waters have become tracts of dry land, and seashores have disappeared into the ocean depths. No man or woman then walks with a single way. This is a lesson from the Lord of life. Another piece. Do not order your wife around in her house when you know she keeps it in excellent order. Do not ask her, where is it? Or say to her, bring it to us, when she has put it in the proper place. Watch her carefully and keep silence, and you will see how well she manages. How happy is your house, and when you support her. There are many men who do not know this. But if a man restrains from provoking strife at home, he will not see its inception. Thus, every man who wishes to master his house must first master his emotions. You know, like a fellow was saying to me, saying, oh, hey, a man is a woman is a man's shadow, you know. I said, what? A woman is a man's shadow? He said, yes, man, a woman is a man's shadow, because whatever he does, you have a woman and she looks to you for example. She looks to you for direction, for leadership, right? And so she mirrors your action. And so we have got to be careful. You see? Thus, every man who wishes to master his house must first master his emotions. And like I promised you, Mr. Aubrey Norton will be in studio with me. And so here is Mr. Aubrey Norton. Good morning, Mr. Norton.
Good morning, Aaron, and thanks for having me.
We know that this GECOM and the elections are very critical issues in the life of this nation. And I don't know if you can just give us an insight as to where we are, or what do you think, where we are at this point in time with regards to the...
Well, as far as I know, GECOM is proceeding with its house-to-house registration. I saw figures, I think this morning, which said 100 and something thousand persons have been registered, and that to me is extremely good in the light of the People's Progressive Party saying to people that they shouldn't register. In fact, you should be aware that to tell people not to register is an offense. People not registering in itself is an offense, but I think the government doesn't have an interest in really prosecuting people. The government's interest is in influencing people to register so that they can exercise their franchise. It is also important to note that after this registration, there will be a new ID card, and the old ID card will no longer be relevant. So even if people are taking political positions, I think they should understand that it is in their interest, even to transact business, do things like collecting your pension, etc. You will need a national ID card. And so, in my opinion, it is short-sighted for people to suggest to some section of the Guyanese society that they should not register. We know that they are saying that because they are mortally afraid of house-to-house registration. They are aware that during their time in government, they padded the list to the point where it became obvious that it was padded. The amount of persons on the list clearly cannot be. And so, in my opinion, what they are seeking to do is really protect themselves and running from the shame that will come when it is established that the list was padded and that no way will we get close to 600,000 people on a voters list with a population of 750,000. So I think that element is generating problems for them. I also believe that Guyanese are sensible and Guyanese will register. There is always going to be that hardcore PPP group that follows blindly, that will do what is happening now. But in large measure, people are registering, and for me, that's a good sign. And more importantly, I understand that a lot of the young people are registering.
You know, Mr. Norton, knowing that you were coming here this morning, I was reflecting on part of our training as young people. And I remember going to Blue Creek with Power Saw and Manpower, Youth Force. And we were able to take those Power Saw and build billets, they used to call them, right? Build places to rest, build chicken pens, build a whole host of things, and I'm saying that the time that the opposition has used to just being critical of the government, I think that they have a role also to play in the training and motivation of our young people,
I wish that was possible. But don't forget, they were in power for 23 years. and they never developed, first of all, a youth policy. They never developed structured programs for young people to become involved in. What they did essentially was to organize a criminal state that was based on drug trafficking and people trafficking, and there are sections of the youth population that bought into it, and in the process of decriminalizing the state, they also criminalized young people. And so the young people were not focused on meaningful and productive things. They were focused on getting rich quick. They were focused on, I mean, it's some of the ridiculous sums you hear people take, young people, for killing people. You can understand how we had deteriorated in the past. And so what needs to happen is, for me, is what is critical. What needs to happen, it has begun to happen. First, you have to train young people, give them the leadership and other skills that they need so they can lead other young people. Then you have a large school dropout population. You have to put mechanisms in place to ensure those young people can return to school. The government has done that through its night school program, which we hope will be expanded, because again, when we came to power in 2015, you had a situation in which somewhere in the vicinity of 16 to 18,000 children were doing the grade 6, or what we call in our day common entrance, and only about 5,000 meeting the fifth form and doing CXC. And many of them that doing the CXC weren't achieving 5 subjects with math and English. So what in just that meant is that you have a situation where young people didn't qualify themselves to be employed. Right. Now, the government has begun the process of rectifying that by creating opportunities for them to return to school, for them to access all kinds of training, so that in the final analysis, they can take a grip of their lives and move forward. You have young people telling you in the streets, some young people who get accustomed to the drug culture, that the government isn't doing anything for them. And when you ask them, what is it the government should do for you? I said to them, look, the government is to create the environment for you to develop in business and employment. Some of them are left with the culture of handouts. Yeah. You go in the village. I mean, I was in Linden and one young person said to me, look, I get 5,000 for going protest with the PPP. Me got for vote for them. I protest, and when they came back the next week, it went up to 10,000. Right. That is the culture they have inculcated over the years. So a lot of young people, you have to now encourage them to develop a vision of where they want to take themselves and their family, what they set out to achieve, and then show them the areas that the government system would have developed and created for them to get opportunities. A number of the training programs at Board of Industrial Training, a number of other training programs that exist. There are training programs that are teaching young people financial literacy and small business development. Now that is critical, because when you take young people and you give them handouts and they're getting the crumbs from the drug table, they don't have the requisite skills to develop business, etc. And so you have to train them and ensure that they move in this positive direction. Look, positive change is always more difficult than cheap deterioration. And so I would say one of the things young people have got to be thankful for is that President Granger has declared very early that he intends to make Guyana an education nation, in which people have access to education. He recently announced that oil resources will go towards free education in every sense. We must recognize, a lot of times when we see these young people who come over with the PPP fever, come over to this administration with the PPP fever of corruption, illegality. You worry for them. But you can't just worry. We have got to now use the resources that will come. And we did a lot without oil resources in the 4 years.
I understand.
And those resources that will come, it is clear from the president's statements that we are going to have a comprehensive human resource development training program in which we will seek to train all Guyanese to be able to work, to be able to do business, and to impact positively on the family, the village, and the country. Because you cannot run or govern a society and your people are not prepared from an educational standpoint. We can talk about Japan, we can talk about Singapore, we can talk about the United States, all of them. One common trend run through them. Some have resources, some don't have. But one common trend run through. Their investment in human development redounds to the benefit of the individual and the wider society. And so that will be the government's focus. And that cannot be done with a People's Progressive Party government. We've seen over the years that they showed no interest in the general education of the population. Their interest was in accumulating wealth, satisfying a few, while the majority of all ethnic groups went astray. Even in the Amerindian indigenous communities, their approach was to give handouts. We have changed that. We are giving the young people and people in those areas the skills so that they can live and develop. We believe in teaching a man to fish rather than giving the man the fish, because once you give him the fish, he or she becomes dependent on the fish all the time. They lack the skills to fish, and so you know where they will stand. So the government is clear in its head that it has to give all Guyanese the tools necessary for their development. On the other hand, the opposition, with its focus on power, seems to have a position that it should utilize its resources to bribe people, to corrupt the youth, so that they can control and dominate the society. And so I think one has to be very, very clear. The focus has to be human resource development. The government has outlined clear policy positions as they relate to developing the human resource at the various levels: higher education, secondary, vocational, and other training. And all of this could only be done if you have an effective and efficient education system. And here again, the government has allocated resources and has been working consistently to remedy the problems you had in the school system as they relates to mathematics and English, which are your base subjects. And again, that's an indication that the government has a clear interest in ensuring that children don't only go to school, but they succeed. People take lightly the provision of bus, bicycle, boats. But if you're a family in the Pomeroon and you're spending $2,000 to send a child to charity and $2,000 back, almost immediately you have $4,000 savings. And people seem not to calculate the savings that go to families from bus, bicycles, boats, including that the expanded hot lunch, hot meals that are given. So I'm saying to you, what the government is manifesting is an interest in people. What President Grange is manifesting is an interest in people. And this is an interest in all Guyanese. If you look at the projects that the government will have developed, all of them are aimed at satisfying Guyanese, not one ethnic group.
Right.
And so one has to be careful. I mean, you have an idea of how the PPP thinks. When you read Guyana Times, you get how they think. It is perfect in their mind for Bangladeshis to come to Guyana. And a lot of them came under them.
Yeah,
Indians to come to Guyana. Latinos, Venezuelans, not a word. But Haitians become a problem. And Nigerians become a problem. It gives you a clear idea of the mindset of the PPP. They don't even consider the fact that on many occasions them are passing through in transit.
Yeah.
They don't even consider the fact that Guyanese themselves migrate and are vulnerable. They don't even consider that people bring skills. So for them, it's not, migration isn't bad. But once it's Haitians and Nigerians, they factor it into their political thinking and they try to make it an issue. And it's a very dangerous thing, because what they are suggesting is that people need to fear. And they're going through this old stereotype. Who they need to fear? Not Venezuelans who want your territory. Not Cubans, Haitians and Nigerians. And so the Guyanese society has to understand that it is part of their fear-mongering and part of their attempts to divide the society. And so when one takes that to this logical conclusion, you see that the PPP has no interest in African Guyanese or Africans generally. Because throughout their term in office, I heard the former president saying that he would have done more for African Guyanese than the APNU AFC. Could I remind him that Linden is populated by African Guyanese, and when they were giving out the suits like Linden Highway, if he can show me how many African Guyanese got land there. And it is only now a lot of them are being able to access land. If he can show us which industries he helped African Guyanese to get into. You know, at present in Linden, a lot of work is being done to put Lindeners back in agriculture. I reminded people on a program that when we were negotiating during the Linden crisis, Ashley Singh, the then finance minister, objected strenuously to us talking about agriculture in Linden, saying there's a comparative advantage in the quarantine and other places. So, how dare you to say you did a lot for African Guyanese community? I also say to people, before this government came to power, drive Sapphire, and it was a nightmare. Leave Sapphire, drive through the back. When you were in Cummins Lodge, you were having nice roads. You then move through to Ogle, nice roads. The minute you meet Pleasance, it changed and you went down. So what did they do for African Guyanese apart from extrajudicially killing about 400 plus of them? Put a lot in prison. Created a police force that had a lot of African Guyanese, but they created a mentality that caused them to hustle African Guyanese communities. So what are they talking about? They have no right to speak. The significant difference with this government is if you drive this country. Oh, before I go there, let me go to the 2005 floods. The 2005 floods should have taught them that if you clean the drains in one area and you don't clean it in another, water doesn't discriminate.
Right, it's going to come from you.
And so it flooded all communities. Now, I remember a case where in Leguan, they were cleaning. And when they met who they considered to be PNC supporters, they stopped the drain cleaning. Now, how do you claim that you
Without
did
clearing that
things
drain.
for African Guyanese in that context? I recall I was part of the PNC had boycotted the International Decade for Africans in the Diaspora, of people of African descent. But I went and participated as an individual. And we produced a document outlining the problems of the African Guyanese, the industries needed to be created, and what should be done. The only thing they took from that was to try to bring, I think, Miriam Makeba and some African group to sing.
To entertain.
Now, while entertainment is important, and entertainment is part of life and culture, if you have a comprehensive program to develop African Guyanese, but you select only entertainment because at the time you were bringing all kind of artists to occupy the young African Guyanese mind with Jamaican dancehall music, etc., and focus them away from the genuine issues of development and not creating the environment for them to progress. You cannot claim to be operating in the interests of African Guyanese. In some regard, they cannot even claim to have operated in the interests of poor Indo-Guyanese. The destruction of the sugar industry is a clear case where they didn't put the interests of Guyanese, by whether they be Indo or Afro, they put what they could have benefited from. I remember on a program with Robert Prasad pointing out the wastage that will occur through Skeldon. And so you're dealing with an opposition, one deviation. When you go to the quarantine in parts of Guyana, you will meet Indo-Guyanese who will tell you they don't want to see the PPP in power because they were very vindictive to them once they disagree with them. So I want to say to you, it's not solely race, it's also political. It is anybody who they perceive to be against them. In their mind, this society should be run by them, their families, and friends. And that all others have no place. And then they start the other stratifications. So Guyanese are faced with a situation in which we need to decide, do we want a government that has already shown it is going to operate in the interest of the people of Guyana, or you want to have an elite that is concerned solely with getting rich, with self-aggrandizement and power at the expense of people. They come talking about transparency. They were not transparent. All the agreements that were signed with entities overseas were only made public in Guyana when the APNU AFC comes to government. Yet they will talk about transparency, yet they would want to talk about accountability. They never did. The law provided for a procurement commission. Throughout the PPP time in office, remember, since 2001 constitutional reform occurred, up to when they would have left power, it would have been 14 years, 2001 to 2015, to put a procurement commission in place. They never did, because they wanted to give the contracts to who they want, when they want, where they want it, so that they were totally in charge. For the first time, you're having a procurement commission that is ensuring fairness, etc. I accept that the commission, that they are faults in the law, etc. We're trying to rectify some of that by ensuring that small businesses, 25% of all the contracts go to small businesses, so you empower. Look, what was happening under the People's Progressive Party was a few was getting richer and richer, and the majority, regardless of ethnicity, living in poverty. Again, if you look at the development of countries, if you don't develop a proper middle class, if you don't develop that wide base of people who are accessing resources, you will end up in problems. The United States is wealthy, but one of the big problems you hear every time is the percentage that is so wealthy and the percentage that is so poor. And so Guyanese have got to focus on the real issue. The real issue here is who is best suited to govern Guyana and ensure the people of Guyana benefit from oil and gas resources. All the evidence point to David Granger and the Alliance and APNU, because they are showing that they are prepared and they are ensuring that the resources of the society benefit a wide cross section, and so that a mass of people will improve rather than the elite who carve out Pradoville 1 and 2 for themselves, rather than a group that focuses on wealth. There is no wonder why the Private Section Commission end up supporting the PPP. If you look at, I mind you, I draw a distinction between the private sector and the Private Sector Commission. For me, the Private Sector Commission has a cabal that benefited from the lawlessness of the People's Progressive Party, and so they don't want law and order. Was there a procurement commission? Do you believe some of Bitco and Guyman buildings that the cronies got, they would have gotten it?
No way.
It would have been an open thing and people would have had a chance. Under them, there was no chance. They just dole out it.
Friends and cronies and family.
And family. Yeah. I mean, BK has outlined what Donna Ramatar did for his brother. You see, so what we're saying here is that is the
crux
choice you have to make. Whether you are going to go back to that style of life or you want to progress with a system in which the people of Guyana benefit in rather than a small elite headed by a power crazy type person.
You know, Mr. Norton, I remember the days of the Young Socialist Movement, and you know, that was being a part of the, I'm proud to say that I was a member of the Young Socialist Movement, but because it has helped to create the person in me, you know, and not only me, many of us, you know. And what I remember vividly is that most of those groups, the Young Socialist Movement groups, and the 4-H Club, and the Girl Guides, and the Scouts, they were all housed in this school buildings in the community. That was where the meetings were held. If they have to gather fundraising activity, it goes on in the school, whatever. But strangely, as soon as the PPP got into power, they destroyed the whole stuff. Everybody was thrown out of the building. Youth groups were disbanded, and today we have this situation where our prisons are filled. I am saying that we need to have the community and the education ministry working together in the school system. Because, yeah, we may have for instance, I went to Paradise Government School, right? And when, in the evening, when those teachers are gone home, it is the members of the community who will use the building to go and do their extra lessons or the, you know, group study or whatever. There weren't no security guards at the gate and the kind. Now you have those security guards there, which I mean, in this time it's a good move. But then we really need to take the school back to the community. I don't know what you think about it.
Well, first of all, I don't think it's by accident that President Granger changed the name from Ministry of Regional Development to Ministry of Communities. I think it's a clear recognition that the basis of your societies are good, sustainable communities, communities with leadership, communities that are economically viable, communities that are producing leaders, communities that are working together. It's a recognition that a child is brought up by the family, the friend, and the community.
Right.
Now that runs counter to what the People's Progressive Party believed. And so I agree with you that there is need for a return to community involvement in education and development generally. I know it can't be the same way as it was in the 60s and 70s, but there is scope for it to be developed and done. And so I'm saying that I agree with you. Like you, I cherish my days in the YSM. I attribute a lot of what I have learned, organizationally and otherwise, to the YSM. By the time I had arrived at the University of Guyana, we were already debating, we already had an understanding of society, we were already taught to put the collective ahead of the personal. And so when the PNC left government in 1992, you didn't have a rich set of ministers with wealth all over the place. You had people who had worked
and were committed
and helped the society. When this bunch left government, the whole top, all they got is money, power, and poverty at the bottom.
At the bottom, and a whole heap of children in the prisons.
Yes.
You know?
So the choices are clear to me. You want a society that is organized, governed by law, and moving in a particular direction, and not to return to the days of the PPP in which the individual and power aggrandizement are the main things to focus on.
You know, as we go out, I want to appeal to folks. I want to appeal to the nation to think and choose wisely. If you need peace and continued prosperity, then you can only vote APNU AFC. You know, I'm endorsing APNU AFC as for continuity in government. So I want to say that the 12th tribe, not the 12th tribe, the House of Naibingi, the House of Naibingi at Linden, there's Wizrock House, Wizrock Tabernacle. They are going to be having a meeting on Sunday the 11th, right, at Wizrock Tabernacle. I repeat, the House of Naibingi, all members are invited to this meeting, all right? Come next Saturday, I will be giving you further information on the meeting. Before I go off, I would like to inform the residents of Bachelor's Adventure Paradise that from the 12th to the 16th of this month, we are going to be having a youth camp for 60 persons between the ages of 12 and 18. And I wish that you will get in contact with me so that we can make sure that, there are a few spaces left for those persons who would wish to be registered for the camp. So do get on board, come and check me out at Paradise, on the Paradise Playfield. The other one is that from the 19th to the 23rd, we'll be at Haslington, the young people in Haslington, the 19th to the 23rd of July. They will have an opportunity to participate in a one-week recreation day camp, right? While in Tiger Bay, from the 26th of this month to the 30th, we will be in Tiger Bay, working with the young people there. Like I said, they're between the ages of 12 to 18 years old. And the opportunity will be used to begin some skills training in the area of mechanic work, masonry, and also electrical installation. Electrical installation will be done at Paradise during the 1 week. You would have also recreational activities at Aslington, Golden Grove area. We're going to be looking at carpentry and masonry, while in Tiger Bay we'll be doing aspects of mechanic work. So I am inviting persons interested to check with me and get yourself registered. The number is 682-9149. Thank you very much.